Welcome to the second keynote of the first day of the seminar. It's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Steve Vosloo. Sorry, it's okay.
That's perfect.
Okay, thank you. From the Shuttleworth Foundation in Cape Town, South Africa. He's fellow of 21st Century Learning Program, and he leads the m4Lit project. The topic of his keynote is the feasibility of using mobile phones to improve reading and writing skills of teenagers in South Africa. Okay. Steve, welcome.
Thank you.
Wish.
Great, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here. I hope you don't mind. Maybe I'll stand, and I like to use my hands a lot, so maybe I can stand here and I won't be in anyone's way. Then. Okay, so firstly, before we start, congratulations to Spain. It was a great party in South Africa, and Emma was saying last night this quote, we did it, you won it, so yeah, well done. And secondly, please, this is a mobile learning day, so take out your phones, switch them on. You don't have to switch them off. Let's do an experiment. Put them on, and let's see if it disrupts the situation. Maybe you put them on silent, but the project I'm telling you about is at yoza.mobi, so feel free to browse while I talk, and then you can see what the thing's about. So really today is kind of a story with two halves. I'm going to give you some project background and the rationale and some statistics, and then some of the lessons. And in between, I'll give you some comments that we've received from our readers, because we allow our readers to leave comments on the Mobi site on our stories. And please stop me at any time with questions, if that's okay. Or yeah, if there's a burning question, please stop me, and we can deal with it then. So here's a comment from a girl, Leslie. She says, a good story, although very short. I'd like to see more on Mixit because it encourages reading. And Mixit is a platform in South Africa, a bit like Facebook, but it's a mobile instant messaging platform. And I'll show you some pictures, but you can chat, and you can also browse stories and static content like movie reviews or news or stories. And Mixit's been a great partner, and that's where most of our traffic comes from. In South Africa, they think there's about 15 million Mixit users. F doesn't mean female, F means flower. And I've become an expert in what these things mean. And I'll take you through them as we come across some of these. That's not actually what Leslie wrote. I'll show you what she wrote. Okay, so I will help to translate for you. If you ask young people to leave comments on their cell phones, that's what you get. And that's one of the things I think we should talk about is texting and literacy and how the two sit together in the same name. Okay, firstly the project. Some background, it started in August 2009, so just over a year ago. We wanted to know if mobile phones can be a complement and an alternative to printed literature in South Africa. And the project has grown outside of South Africa, but that's where it started. We wanted to know if teenagers would read stories on their phones, longer stories, not just short SMSs. Would they write to us on their phones? And we wanted to try and understand their mobile literacies. So what I present here today is some research from the pilot phase, which was August to December last year, and then the ongoing statistics from January to now. And it's funded by the Shuttleworth Foundation, where I'm a fellow. So I'll cut to the best slide of all. In a year, we've had 60,000 reads of our stories. And each story is about a 20 to 30-page Word document. So you can imagine reading a 30-page Word document on a screen that's that big. It's torture, okay? You and I wouldn't do it, but people are doing it because it's the mobile phone, it's where they're at, it's all they have. And that's where they spend their lives. So for them, it's not so bad. It's not just about reading. We want people to write as well. We've had 30,000 comments, and I've read most of them. So that's why I say I'm an expert in this text speak. We have writing competitions. So we've had 10,000. And we work with mLearning in South Africa and in Kenya. But obviously, the Mobi site is global. So there's two ways to access our stories. One is on the Mobi site, yoza.mobi, and the other one is within mLearning itself. There's one other way, and I'll show you that in a second. But so, of course, the Mobi site is global, but mLearning, we're in those countries. OK, so some of the background, and I'm just going to go through this quite quickly. South Africa is a book-poor society. 51% of households don't have a single leisure book in them. So you say, well, if you don't have books at home, maybe you have books at the library, at school. That's how many schools have functioning libraries. Only 7%. But of course, what people do have is cell phones. It's a mobile revolution. And this is one of the things that Africa can be proud of, is that mobile is really taken off there. And we're, I think, very innovative in the way we use mobile phones. And I do think it is a revolution. So South Africa basically has good mobile coverage, relatively cheap mobile data costs, although SMS and voice is expensive, but mobile data is relatively cheap, and very poor internet, like PC-based internet adoption. And those are the three kind of ingredients where this kind of project can work. We publish stories, mobile novels, and those are long. We can't use SMS, we can't use voice. It's just too expensive, and the content is too long. So we have to use mobile data. So you have to browse through the browser on your phone or through mLearning. And this situation, one of the researchers we worked with called it this literacy and technology paradox, where young people, especially teenagers at school, poor literacy performance, book poor, low access to computers, like 10% of the population has access to computers. But at the same time, high access to cell phones. And cell phones, what you read and write on a cell phone is interacting with the written word. I mean, it's text speak, but it's written. So it's this paradox. This is what I hear all the time from people. And this was one of the inspirations for the project. And so here's a quote from someone, Dottie1, who said, "It's great. For me, it's really hard to pick up a book to start reading, but I don't mind reading on my phone." And that's the kind of teenager we thought, let's try and reach with this project. We know that in Japan, mobile novels have been very popular for a number of years, for 10 years now. But obviously, South Africa is not Japan. So would our teenagers enjoy reading stories like this, like they did? So to answer these questions, we decided to create a mobile novel called Contacts. We sat down with some teenagers in Cape Town. We said, give us some ideas. We held some story development workshops. These guys were great. And we came up with a story about 4 teenagers in Cape Town and this adventure that they get into. We called it, Contacts. This is what it looks like. Most kids don't have an iPhone to access the site, but I use it because you can see a lot. You'd see a lot less if you were one of our kids. But you can see all the chapters, and if you click into a chapter, then there's an image. We kept the image sizes quite small because you're paying for mobile data. And at the bottom of each chapter, you can cast a vote on something, and you can leave comments. So we try to make it interactive. We actually built a lot more interactive features into it, but they didn't get used so much. The main things were the reading, voting, and commenting. Those are 2 of the characters. Just on this, Contacts was 21 chapters, and we told it over 21 days. So we went for a serialized, and these are some of the things we learned from Japan, kind of publish in serial installments, so a chapter a day. We published in English and a local language, isiXhosa. The story is openly licensed, Creative Commons licensed, so the Open University will enjoy that. And all of our stories are openly licensed, so anybody can translate them, distribute them, even sell them, remix them. We encourage that. What else can I tell you? Yeah, we ran it for those 21 days. We also put it onto mxit. So that's what mxit looks like. It's a much more stripped down version, much more text-based. On the left, you can see your list of buddies, and you add contacts as a buddy, and when you click contacts, it gets you into the story. So just to give you an idea of the timeline, this kind of happened August, September, October last year. And that was the feedback in about a month. That's how many people on mxit added us as a buddy. That's how many signed up to actually join, to come and read. And that's the age breakdown. So we were going for 14 to 17-year-olds, but we got quite a lot of uptake with the slightly older group. That number is substantial, even on mxit terms, because other companies like Nike and Puma advertise within mxit. So 63,000 even against commercial kind of comparison is high. But not all of those people read the whole story. So this is typically what you get. So that's 21 chapters along the bottom. Lots of interest, the first few chapters, big drop-off, and then it kind of stabilizes. And you can see on the Mobi site and on mxit, it's pretty much the same trend. So people actually read it. So what we did was we took the last chapter. We said, OK, if you've read the last chapter, you've probably read the whole story. And to be safe, let's take a third off that. So this is 2/3 of the number of people who accessed the last chapter was 17,200 reads. That's what we're comfortable to say. That's how many people read the story. Again, it's a significant number. In South Africa, if you sell a book, if you sell 3,000 copies, that's a bestseller. So this was free. The story is free, but you pay for mobile data. It's about it's €1 per chapter. So it's affordable, even for Africa. So we were happy with these numbers. Tule says it's cool and nice, not boring. And Siyafundisa is Zulu for we are learning. Please.
How did people know about this? By word of mouth? Or?
We did some advertising on mxit itself. Yeah. So we tried some word of mouth. Didn't work that well. It was more you'll see this I'll show you just now. It's the marketing really makes a difference. Yeah. Tandy said, boring. Okay, so you can't reach everyone. And that little face, the :Z is actually a little angry face. I didn't know that either. But so not everyone liked it, but most people did like it. We also did some research, and I'll just give you the main points. We interviewed about 60 kids, low-income kids in Cape Town. A couple of surveys. We did 2 focus groups, usability, observation. We realized that for them, most digital writing happens on mobile phones. So for us, most writing happens on PCs, I'm sure, and then probably on mobile phone and last on paper. For all of these kids, most of it happens on cell phone. And the same for reading, most of it. So this is where they're doing their reading and writing. The isiXhosa version was popular. It wasn't as popular as the English version, but if you think that language as an indigenous language has been marginalized, the uptake we got was seen as a success. There was lots of peer-to-peer learning, and we asked these kids, who taught you how to use mxit? Almost 90% is friends. So there's a lot of, you get a lot of the word of mouth and the peer-to-peer learning around the phone. There wasn't so much around the kind of telling other people about the story, but we know that there's a lot of this peer-to-peer learning happening there. And then Marion Walton, one of the researchers, she said, the data suggests a substantial amount of interest in M-novels. And given the number of teens with mobile phones, there's certainly room for growth. So we were happy as a pilot phase. For me, the big aha moment was that mobile phones are actually a viable distribution platform for longer form content, not just SMSs and instant message chats, and for getting participation from people. So this can work in South Africa. Okay, who would like to try and work this one out? This is awesome, well done. Okay, you can text speak. Okay, then you know, I try to not just give positive comments, but most of our comments are pretty positive, and I haven't done an analysis of the 30,000 comments, but most of them are pretty positive, like the clear majority. And there's kind of two types of comments. The one is this kind of thing where it's about being able to read on your phone and just about the experience, and then the other half is about the story itself and people giving the characters advice. Okay, so since then we've published more contact stories and we've launched Yoza. And Yoza is essentially more stories in different genres. So we wanted to see, this is a teen adventure. What do we do if we bring in a couple of different genres and kind of mix it up a bit? And we've published also on a platform, one of those stories on a platform called Young Africa Live. So Contacts was there. You know, all these stories stay online. We've done 2, 3, and now Yoza. And those are some of the stories that we've now added. And we dropped in Shakespeare. Shakespeare is free content, so we dropped it in there to see what would happen. And it's been quite interesting. So the 3 new stories we added were Street Skills, Soccer, Confessions, like teen issues, and Sisters, like a teen romance, more girl, kind of teen girl kind of story. That's what it looks like. Oops. And this was a great one. Yoza, I love your stuff, your flavor is hot. Okay, so this person clearly likes the story. So Young Africa Live, just this other platform. In South Africa, there's a thing called Vodafone Live, which is if you're a Vodacom subscriber, that's your default homepage on your phone. And you don't pay, you can browse that site and you don't pay anything. There's no data charges. So we got our story on there, so it's genuinely free. I mean, you can go and buy a SIM card, but it's cheap. It will cost you about 10 euro cents. Put it in with no airtime, and you can read the story. So we put the Confessions story on there. In terms of kind of how did the reads do, I'll just show you the different comparisons. Confessions and Sisters were the 2 most popular ones. You know, Confessions, this is like in the first month. Confessions got about 5,000 reads. But if we look at Contacts 1, those numbers are quite low. So, you know, our first splash last September, October got really good uptake. We're not getting such great uptake now on Yoza. But if you add in the fact that we published one of the stories on Young Africa Live, then those numbers go up. Same for competition entries. Not bad, just under 1,000 for Confessions, but you know, if we put in Contacts, we got 2,000 entries that first time. But again, if we include Young Africa Live, then the numbers go up. So that's the difference between thinking about Yoza as a platform or thinking about our content that lives on lots of different platforms. Comments, this is the big difference. We've got lots of great comments and typically even longer comments. So I did a word count of all the comments that we've had and the competition entries in the first month, and that's it there. It's about 440,000 words. What is that? That is, so I tried War and Peace. That's about 3/4 of War and Peace that people wrote on their phones in response to our stories. So you can see the teen issues and romance. And I think that there are certain genres that lend themselves more to this kind of medium because your phone's intimate. It is kind of gossipy. It is, especially on mLearning, there's a lot of kind of flirtation and chat and boys, girls, issues. So those genres kind of relate well. again, we asked people, we got like 2,000 entries, what do you think? And most people said it rocked. Okay, so the people are liking the stories. This is an interesting one about kind of about the story. So Brian said, first and foremost, I'd like to say is a shack is not a place we are all proud of living, but it makes us who we are. So in the story, the one girl goes to live with her father, and she moves from a house to this shack, okay, which is how a lot of South African people live, in shacks. I come from a shack, and believe me, I have good memories in that shack. And as for you, Amanda, shame on you. Shame on you. Latoya, my sweetie pie, I'm proud of you. You don't need an ATM, you need a dad. Because we said, like, should she ask her dad for money because she's not going to go live in a shack? High five. So a lot of comments like this, like talking to the characters and talking about the story. This was a great comment on Romeo and Juliet. So if Friar's plan works, then Romeo will be able to come and take Juliet with him, Juliet, to live happily together at Mantua, but if it fails, someone's going to be dead. Lol. I don't know if lol means lots of love or laugh out loud. Again, about Romeo and Juliet, I loved the book. Wish it didn't have an ending. Shakespeare, please bring another one like this. It was mwah. So maybe we can find some old Shakespeare stories. And Romeo and Juliet was the most popular Shakespeare. And then Othello. We've got 5 up there. And I chose them. These are books that kids are doing in high school now. And so the thinking is not that you'd read the whole book on your phone, although some people actually did. But if you've got, if your homework is Act 1, Scene 1, read it tonight, and you don't have a book, and you've got Mix-It, you can go and read it. Okay, so just a one-page summary of kind of, okay. The novelty factor is real. Like I said, the numbers have come down. The comments are lower, the competition's lower, but the comments are, the comments are longer, and there's a high number of comments. And I think that's the difference here. We're getting, and also a slightly older crowd. There's a lot of engagement with the content. So I'm going to dash through a couple of lessons. Mobile is a content monster. You can't feed it enough. You put up a story, it finishes the next day, the kids go, where's the next story? You just can't actually, that's the little shop of horrors plant. But yeah, waiting for the next chapter kills me. So we still publish in a daily chapter, and once you start feeding this monster, you've got to keep feeding it. It's instant, and we didn't always moderate. We moderate our comments on Mix-It. So this person said, yo, whenever I write a bloody comment, they don't add it. What the F going on? You're working on my nerves. So this person's angry because they left a comment and it didn't go live. So if you're going to ask for people's participation, make sure that you give it to them. It's always on. So that's 24 hours at the bottom, from midnight to midnight. That's when comments are left. So our readers never sleep. And this is the thing with mobile. It's obviously not a good thing for school kids, but a lot of our readers now are university students. They stay up late at night. This is with mobile. This is what you can expect. They read it anytime, any place, anywhere. And you do get these peaks of traffic. So platform matters. And I think this is what I was saying earlier, that Confessions, this story we ran on Yoza and on Young Africa Live, which is Young Africa Live's the red, and we've got a lot more traffic there. And that's an established platform with an established user base. So to create your own platform is hard. And I would say try and use somebody else's if you can. You were asking about, somebody asked about marketing. You can see those two spikes with the red arrows. The day before we did marketing, and the next day the traffic goes up. So that suggests it's not so much about word of mouth, more about the actual marketing. And what we're finding is when we market the second time, the first time we get a spike, the second time a spike, but it's smaller. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to sustain that interest. I don't know if that's a problem. I think, I was saying earlier, maybe I think what's happening is that you do something, there's a bit of buzz, there's some marketing, a lot of people come, half of them realize, okay, this isn't what I thought it was, they go away. But the ones who are left behind are very loyal fans. So, these are people who left lots of comments. And, some of them left 50 or more comments in a month. So they really are kind of spending time on these stories. So when reading becomes snacky, that's what mobile is. Like you dip into the story. And that's why we have short chapters, because you're waiting for the bus or it's break time. It's like a snacky experience. It is hard to make things sticky, and this is something we're trying to work out. And one of the ways we do that is to actually keep them coming back, because we only publish a chapter a day. Comments are great. There's a lot of rubbish out there, so if you ask for people's comments, you do get a lot of rubbish that you have to read. But the comments generally are amazing in terms of instant feedback from your users. And I think commercially this is really important in terms of, so this is an education project, but if you wanted to try out new products or know what your customers are thinking, I think this is very powerful. So you might end up with something you didn't expect. We went for 14 to 17, and we're getting a real uptake on this kind of 19 to 25-year-olds. And we're still trying to work out what to do with that. It's not a problem, it's just this is kind of what's happened. For us, it's not come that cheap, and I think this is a problem we need to work on, because it's about 3,500 euros to do one of those adverts on mxit. The foundation has been funding this, but if you wanted to start a story, you don't necessarily have that kind of money. So I think if you want big numbers, partner with somebody who's got money, like a foundation or a Nike or a government department, who says, okay guys, we're doing Shakespeare, we're doing Macbeth this year, and you can read it on your phone, and that'll generate traffic there. Or if you wanted to just do this on your own, you totally could do it. You could use something like WordPress, and that has a mobile plugin, and you could put it on the web, but you'd probably be talking to quite a particular kind of niche, in the long tail of users. So maybe your class or your group of students. The platform we've used to develop this, the content management system, we are going to open source, so you're free to use ours. And we've worked with the Prikelt Foundation. That's a foundation in South Africa. So that should happen in the next couple of months, and my email's at the end. Contact me if you want that. I think this for me was the big question, and this is the last question. Are we reaching people who are already readers? So if you're a bookworm, does that make you go to Yoza? And I think that we're reaching both. Many of the user comments are by people like you've seen, who go, I'm not much of a reader, but I'm liking this. And our hope is that this will make people go, okay, it'll change the way they think about reading. It's not so bad, actually. I quite enjoy this. Maybe I'll go get a book out of the library, Certainly the people who enter competitions are generally, because I call them up, and they generally are people who do like to read. So kind of in conclusion, this is the context of Africa. It's book poor, mobile phone rich. So that's the Kindle. The cell phone is the Kindle of Africa, or the iPad of Africa. And it's going to be like that for a long time. There's huge potential, and I know that this word keeps coming up in mobile learning, like potential. We certainly need to scale this up, but I think we've already demonstrated some successes. Like there's something here. And that's what we intend to do with this project. Is it started out as literacy, but I think that there's huge scope for social messaging. So like a mobile novel about a young boy or girl, and it's really teaching about financial literacy, and it's sponsored by a bank, or it's about sports and healthy living, or about kind of healthy sexual behavior, or whatever it is, but more kind of social messaging content. I mean, there's just really positive feedback from. Yeah, I've kind of covered all of that. There are two main reports from the pilot. They're available at m4lit.wordpress.com/reports. I'll leave that up there. And that's kind of it. Go to the website. That's the blog where all the updates are. That's my email address. We're looking for partners. So if you want to try this, use the platform, try this in your country or with your group, please talk to me. or in Latin America, other countries, or if you wanted to translate the content and run it here, then yeah, please talk to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sit.
Thank you very much, Steve, for your fantastic talk and its lessons. Very
Sure.
useful, very useful lessons.
Sure.
Okay, I think we have 15 minutes for questions, comments. Please, if you make a question, please introduce yourself to the rest of seminar.
Thank you. My name's Nick Robinson. I'm here from York in the UK. It's very interesting to see you tapping into this kind of legacy of serialization in literature, which is obviously how a lot of very famous writers got started,
Sure.
writing in newspapers and this kind of thing. To what extent do you think that the interest generated in these stories is to do with that serialization thing and this kind of short attention span, looking for cliffhangers and waiting on? Do you think you'd have as much success with much longer novels delivered in one go?
Yeah.
If you see what I mean.
Good question. I don't know. So the first Contact story, we did a Moby site and we did Mixit, and the Mixit deal only came through later. So we actually had run the whole thing on the Moby site, the 21 days, and about 2 weeks later we published on Mixit, and we just dumped the whole thing there, where you read at your own pace, and that's where we got those high numbers. So I think the answer is kind of both. Some people will happy to kind of read at their own pace. Others are definitely, the soapiness kind of definitely appeals to them. But I've been working with an organization called Read South Africa. It's been going for 30 years, and they're about promoting literacy. And they called me up and they said, look, we're about literacy. We don't care if it's in print or on a cell phone. If you can help us with a phone, then let's talk. So we had a great conversation, and the woman who started that, she said, I said, do you think this will turn people into readers if they like this, even though it's kind of quite simple and it's cliffhanger? And she said yes. She said it's important just to get people reading things that they enjoy, and then hopefully it kind of leads into a kind of a love of reading. Yeah. Okay, sure.
Hi, name's Gavin. I'm based here in Barcelona, primarily involved in training teachers in the use of technologies. As things get smaller, and here in Catalonia we're introducing in some schools netbooks and things, there's a lot of worry about people's eyesight as well.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, have you encountered any criticism for encouraging people to stare at tiny screens for a long... It's a question without agenda.
Okay, I haven't. Yeah. It's a good question, though. I think all of us are actually, we're in this world where we interact with technology so much, we don't really know what it's doing to us, even for us. And so who knows, what we'll know 100 years from now. We won't be able to read it anyway. True. Emma, I have questions as well.
Hi. Emma Kisilova, UNESCO Chair. Steve, so I guess the project is 2 years long, right?
Yeah, it's been going for about a year and a bit, yeah.
Yeah, so in April or somewhere there, next year, it's actually is going to be finished, right?
Yeah.
So where does it take you?
Yeah.
What have you taken, let's say, as valuable luggage, and what will be your next step?
Okay.
I'm sure you're already planning.
That's a great question. So Emma's right. The funding only goes until February, March next year. We're encouraged to take our projects with us as fellows and to try and make them sustainable. So my goal now is to look at sustainability options. I think the most appealing option is to get sponsored content, like a bank sponsoring a financial literacy story. Or another option is to get advertising within the stories themselves, either kind of product placement, which is one option, but I'm just thinking of all options, or just kind of also a sponsorship like the Nike, the Nike soccer story. So that's the goal. We're trying to make it sustainable. If it doesn't, then we've got good partners who will keep that content up And I've put out a call for writers. At the moment, we pay our writers to produce these stories, but we're trying to engage the community to be able to run this for free. Because it's actually a great platform for aspiring writers. Like I said, in South Africa, if you get 3,000 read, that's a bestseller. Some of these writers of Confessions, she's had, 10 or 15,000 reads of that story. So for her, maybe in the future we don't have to pay her, but she will be happy to actually put this up. But in terms of kind of the software is all open sourced, will be the content's openly licensed. So even if it doesn't carry on, unfortunately, then at least all those learning materials are out there.
Gardner Campbell from the US. What plans do you have to archive the content and the interactions surrounding it for further study as we think about these early days?
Sure. So part of the Shuttleworth Foundation, part of our philosophy is very much around openness. So all of this lives on the Mobi site, and you can see all of the comments there, and all of the data, like this presentation, I'll put online at the blog. All the research reports, the data is available. If you wanted the actual data, I'd be very happy to share that with you. But that's very much part of our kind of mandate at the foundation, is to make sure it's all openly licensed and openly archived. Yeah.
I think I have the mic here.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I work in educational publishing, and I was wondering, you were just talking about partners and that thing there. Have you had any collaboration with book publishers?
I've tried to, but they've been really slow. It's an industry that doesn't change very easily.
No, believe me, I know.
Yeah.
Because it just strikes me that if I was thinking about this just from a purely kind of with a publisher's hat on, you've got a kind of goldmine of potential readers of print books, but also, market research gold in terms of what people want to read, which is, the holy grail really for publishers, to be able to say, to give demonstrative proof that these topics are interesting, this is what people want and potentially would buy. So, I mean, it'd probably be worth exploring further as a potential kind of collaboration.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. And the conversations I've had so far, the publishers generally try to think from a commercial perspective, and this is free, so there isn't a model right now. Although, there are options that could work. I mean, we could charge for the content, and we might try that just for one of the stories, make it really cheap, like €0.50 for the whole story, and see what people do with it. I think that people do pay for content. I know that there's various perspectives on that, but if it's affordable enough and accessible enough. But one of the suggestions that the publishers made was to pre-release 3 chapters here, and then you go and buy the book, that kind of thing. We have this condition that the content on here is openly licensed, and that has also stopped some publishers from wanting to publish. I actually had a few questions as well. I don't think there's time, but maybe there's for you. Okay. And these are some of the questions that kind of we're thinking of as we run this project. I think that last point is relevant, where we found that this literacy and technology paradox, whereas in school, typically, I think mLearning is kind of a bit different. Those schools are very forward-thinking, and they want to try this thing. But generally, in school, your experience is very unconnected and very kind of linear. And outside of school, there's all these kind of other mobile literacies happening that aren't recognized by the school system at all, or or the higher education system. And maybe that'll change over the next few years. I think it has to, because there's this whole world happening outside of the classroom that the school's kind of trying to turn a blind eye to, but it's, those worlds are going to collide pretty soon.
It's just for your question 1, if you look at the work of David Crystal in the UK, he's done quite a lot of work on texting and the effect on non-native speakers of English, and it turns out that it doesn't really have a negative impact at all.
Brilliant.
So, but that's a very short summary of his work, but have a look at what he has to say.
Okay, thanks. I think it's a good point, you know, and if you look at these some of the comments that are about the story, that person has read the story, they've comprehended it, they've come up with an opinion, they've expressed themselves. It's just that last kind of point of expression where it's not conventional language, it's text speak. But they've ticked off all those other kind of, you know, good literacy boxes. John?
I've just been given the microphone. And when I learn how to turn it on. Is it? Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think probably some of us are aware of the work in the UK, but what that first question made me think actually was when you unpack it, the issue about exposing non-English speakers in developing countries to English because, in the terminology of John Canny, for example, it's a power language, it's what you need to get on in the global economy. And on the other hand, the issues about preserving mother tongues and, I don't know, kind of authentic local cultures. So, I mean, I think you have to see that question in that context.
Sure.
So I don't think it's an easy one that has a yes/no answer, because it has all these other implications about kind of participation. Yeah, lots of other implications.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And especially in South Africa, it's a very political issue. Yeah, but I think, you know, what we're seeing is that. So let's assume that you do have to study English, which you actually do in South Africa as a school student. If most of your interaction is kind of text speak, then that's what you're learning from. It's not like, you know, maybe in the UK some of the examples are, you've read all the good books and you do see good English, and then you see texting. If you've like primarily exposed to texting, what's that going to do? Do you think that's normal? And that's, yeah, I mean, we need to kind of look out for. I don't know what the answer is, but.
I suppose, sorry, to finish off, I suppose in the context of discussions within the university system within the UK, it's touching on conversations about digital literacy.
Great.
How those different registers, text speak, mother tongue,
mother
tongue, universal English, how competence in those is probably a requisite, but actually more importantly is some kind of critical understanding in terms of this. In this context we use text speak with these people, in this context we use English with these other people, we use our mother tongue in this other context, and so it's not just the issue about competence, but it's actually a critical awareness of when it's appropriate to do these various things.
Exactly, yeah.
There, Eva de Lira from Open University of Catalonia. To me, all of the questions sort of make me think about the power of storytelling, and even Facebook as a storytelling. I think everyone's craving for good stories, and as in terms of schools, as long as we treat it as literacy or academically, we're missing on the passion for delivering stories, and we see that all over the world. So, you know, I guess that I would emphasize the power for storytelling, and there's a need for that.
Okay,
thank you.
Just a little comment. Your question number 5 looks to me that it's actually, as I understand it, could be a goal of the project. It would be exactly to close the gap between mobile and school literacy, no? So it's not just to be reflected, but I believe maybe we have to learn how to capitalize on the literacies, mobile literacies of the young people, and to make them possible to increase the school literacies. So?
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
If I could just add just a small comment leading on from that. We did some work a few years ago where we were targeting young people with very poor literacy. And at the beginning of the project, we had a number of questions coming from people saying, oh, well, how can you possibly use mobile phones for literacy because you'll teach people to spell incorrectly, all these sorts of things. But one of the things that we found was a lot of the young people themselves didn't realise how much literacy they had because they didn't think that that texting and reading messages and those sorts of things was literacy. But when they started to realise that it was, that enormously improved their own kind of self-esteem and made them more open to further learning. Yeah. So very interesting kind of knock-on effect.
Interesting, yeah. Well, this is the thing, this is really where young people, that's where they spend their lives for a lot of them. So if you recognize that, and there was a Pew Internet, American Life Internet study about 3 years ago that looked at how much reading and writing American teens do. And what it found was that they actually do a lot more than any previous generation, but it's not necessarily formalized. It's, they included emails, blogs, SMSs, chats. So that amount of exposure to text is vast, actually. So if you begin to include that and kind of consider that, then something very interesting is happening here. And yeah, this is the thing, we need to try and make sense of it. But it's true, and that's why I asked the question earlier about how do we move this into the broader kind of curriculum and the broader education system. And I've had some success with teachers who kind of are champions and who have tried this and they've responded very positively. And I think you're right that for the broader adoption, it needs a lot of teacher training and development. But it's certainly something that's going to come up. At the moment, most of the way it comes up is you read newspaper articles saying, teachers say, our exams are full of these. We can't mark the exams anymore because they've got all these text-speak words in them. But I think that's the media hype. There's a much bigger. It's not as bad as what people say, and so we need to try and kind of cross these worlds.
I think we have time for a last question. Last question. No, it's okay.
I'm sorry I came in late. Have you treated question 3, who was excluded?
We haven't, and it's hard to work out where these people are coming from, because all I know often is there's a phone number and a username. We do get some statistics. I don't know how reliable they are. What they're suggesting is it's mostly urban centers. And so Marion Walton was asking, what about the rural areas? Having said that, when I call people who've won the competitions, and I chat to them, then I kind of ask them, okay, where do you live? And a lot of them actually I'd say about half of them live in rural areas. And I sometimes go, I've never heard of these places. I go look them up on Google Maps or Google Earth, and it's a village. I mean, it's like, so, but certainly some people are excluded. My kind of view, I've been in ICT for development for 10 or 12 years now, and there's obviously the digital divide issue. My feeling's always been, well, we can't wait for everybody to have arrived before we get going. Obviously, we need to try and close that gap as much as possible, but we need to kind of work with those who have already got access. And certainly in South Africa, there's enough with mobile phones that are internet enabled, which is what you need for this. Yeah. It's a good question, though, and it's a tricky one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and after the last question, the closing question.
Thank you. This is Mireia Fernandez from the UOC. I just can't stay quiet just thinking about reachability. The point is that in rural areas, the quality of mobile connection is different usually. So it's mostly in urban areas where you will be able to connect to the internet through mobile phones. So I do agree with your focus, but in this sense, I mean, the expected results is that they might be urban people who are connecting to these services, because I mean usually there is no chance in rural areas. Just I wanted to add this.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you again, Steve, and
Pleasure.
thank you all for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you.